Estes Park, Colorado. High in the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by whispering pines and snow-capped silence, stands a grand white building that gleams in the daylight. Elegant, peaceful, timeless. But when the sun goes down and the wind starts to hum through the halls, the Stanley Hotel reveals its true face. A place where history never died. A place where the past still walks the corridors. In 1909, inventor Freeland Oscar Stanley, co-creator of the Stanley steamer automobile, arrived in Estes Park suffering from tuberculosis. Doctors said he wouldn't live long. The mountain air revived him. Grateful for his recovery, Stanley decided to build a grand hotel, one that would bring luxury to the wilderness. The Stanley Hotel opened its doors in 1909, a marvel of early 20th century architecture. White Georgian facades, crystal chandeliers, grand staircases, a palace in the mountains. But from the beginning, there was something strange about the place. Workers often complained of whispers in empty rooms. Tools would vanish overnight. And deep in the unfinished basement, some swore they heard coughing, the sound of dying tuberculosis patients from long before the hotel existed. The hauntings seemed to seep into the foundation itself, as if the mountain had its own memories. In the early years, the hotel thrived. Wealthy families, businessmen, and travelers came from across America to breathe the crisp air and dance in the ballroom under golden lights. But even then, whispers persisted. Guests spoke of hearing pianos playing in the middle of the night. Doors opened on their own, and cold spots lingered for hours. By the 1920s, legends began to grow. Room 217 became infamous. A chambermaid named Elizabeth Wilson had nearly died there in a gas explosion in 1911. She survived, but guests reported seeing her ever since, a polite ghost still tending to the room. Some woke to the smell of smoke, faint like burning gas, and the sight of a woman in an old-fashioned maid's uniform, quietly walking through the door before disappearing into thin air. Her presence, they said, was gentle but chilling. Decades passed. The Great Depression, World War II, and the fading glamour of mountain tourism took their toll. The Stanley began to lose its shine. But even as business slowed, the ghosts never left. The halls whispered as though remembering what once was. Caretakers reported hearing typewriters clacking in empty rooms. Laughter echoed from the ballroom at 3 a.m., a full orchestra playing for invisible guests. Sometimes the music stopped suddenly, as if the dancers had realized they were being watched. In the music room, the grand piano would play itself. Witnesses described seeing the keys move, soft melodies drifting through the air, notes trembling like the breath of something unseen. Many believed it was Flora Stanley, the hotel founder's wife, still performing for her beloved guests. In 1974, a young writer and his wife checked into the Stanley Hotel. The tourist season had ended. They were the only guests. That writer was Stephen King. The night he stayed there would change horror forever. They stayed in room 217. King later described walking through empty corridors, the carpets muffling his footsteps, the silence pressing down like a weight. That night he dreamed his son was running through the halls, screaming, being chased by a fire hose that had come to life. He woke in a cold sweat, stepped out onto the balcony, and looked at the endless dark mountains around him. Within weeks, He began writing The Shining. The world thought it was fiction, but those who knew the Stanley weren't so sure. By the late 1980s, paranormal teams began visiting the Stanley Hotel. One of the first groups recorded strange electromagnetic fluctuations in the basement, particularly near the old tunnel that once connected the main hotel to the servants' quarters. They captured disembodied voices, laughter, and faint music. Thermal cameras showed sudden cold spots forming, human-shaped outlines in rooms that should have been empty. In one video, a chair in room 401 moved several inches on its own. Guests who stayed there described feeling watched, especially by the closet. One man claimed he woke to find the door creaking open slowly, as if someone inside wanted to see him. When he checked the next morning, the door had no latch, yet it was tightly shut. Room 401 soon became infamous for its aggression. Some said a man named Lord Dunraven, the original landowner before Stanley, still lingered there, angry, possessive, territorial. Women reported being touched or whispered to in their sleep. Others woke to see a shadowy figure at the foot of their bed, a tall man wearing an old overcoat, fading into the darkness when they screamed. Staff confirmed that 401 was the only room guests frequently checked out of early. One clerk recalled a terrified woman running downstairs at midnight, shaking uncontrollably. She said, the clerk whispered, he was standing right behind her, breathing. Few returned after such encounters. The McGregor Ballroom remains one of the most active locations. Even today, staff often find tables rearranged overnight. Security cameras have caught orbs, glowing lights darting between chairs, as if dancing to a rhythm no one can hear. In one famous incident, a wedding photographer captured a full-bodied apparition, a translucent woman standing by the stage, smiling faintly. No one recognized her. No guest matched her description. The management reviewed guest logs from 1909. There was a woman named Lydia Remington who had performed as a pianist during the hotel's opening gala. She had died of pneumonia 2 months later. Her ghost, it seems, still waits for her next performance. Below the hotel lies a labyrinth of tunnels. Cold, narrow passages connecting staff quarters, boiler rooms, and storage areas. The air there feels heavier, charged with an unseen force. Paranormal investigators often describe it as electrically alive. Dogs refuse to enter. Visitors report seeing shadows crawl along the walls, shapes that don't belong to anyone present. One team placed motion sensors along the tunnel. At 2:37 a.m., all sensors triggered at once, yet the cameras recorded nothing. Just a sudden drop in temperature from 65 to 40 degrees in seconds. A few moments later, one investigator swore he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around. There was no one there. But a faint, breathy voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here." Today, the Stanley Hotel is a thriving tourist attraction. Visitors come from all over the world, not only for its beauty, but for its ghosts. It hosts ghost tours, overnight investigations, and events celebrating King's The Shining. Yet strange things still happen. Guests wake to find their suitcases unpacked. Lights flicker in patterns like Morse code. Children are seen running in the hallways, only to vanish mid-turn. Phones ring in empty rooms, playing static and faint laughter. One staff member working the night shift says it best. You don't work at the Stanley, you work with the Stanley, because it's still alive in its own way. In 2018, A maintenance worker entered the basement at 3 a.m. to check on a faulty water line. His radio crackled. The signal cut out. He reported hearing a child giggling, followed by a woman humming a lullaby. When he turned, his flashlight flickered. He saw movement down the tunnel, a figure in white, gliding rather than walking. Frozen in fear, he blinked, and it was gone. The next morning, security footage showed his flashlight beam shaking violently before cutting to black. For 42 seconds, nothing but darkness. When the image returned, the worker was gone. He was found upstairs, unconscious, near room 217, whispering, "She wouldn't let me leave." The hotel has no explanation.
Over a century after it opened, the Stanley Hotel stands proud, a symbol of elegance, history, and something far deeper. Visitors see a masterpiece of architecture. Locals see a resting place for the restless. Every corner has a story. Every hallway has a shadow. And sometimes, when the wind blows down from the Rockies and the power flickers, guests swear they hear faint piano music drifting through the air, a melody from another time. Some say the hauntings of the Stanley Hotel are nothing more than imagination, the power of suggestion. Others insist that the walls themselves have memory, that energy never dies, but simply echoes through the years. And one truth remains undeniable. There are places in this world where history never sleeps. The Stanley Hotel, high in the Colorado mountains, is one of them. A place that welcomes guests from around the world and never truly lets them go.